Your clothes are about to get way more expensive, and we need to talk about why. Hello Internet, welcome to Style Theory, the show that is seriously contemplating a no-buy year thanks to all of these sky-high prices. But is that really the answer? 2025 is the year of rising price tags across the board, everywhere from Shein to Saks Fifth Avenue. And I know that talking about money can be taxing. But the best weapon against things that seem overwhelming is understanding the WWHW.
Huh?
You know, the WWHW, the what, why, how, and who of the situation. And for today's edition, we will be covering what is making a Temu cardigan cost the same as a McMansion, why is it happening, how it's affecting you, and who is really going to feel the pain in their bank statements. Are you ready, theorists? Because today is going to change how you look at your closet forever. In our quest to answer WWHW, the first thing we need to solve is the what. What is making the price go up? If you've been reading, well, any headline lately, you've probably seen this word, tariff. It can seem like a scary and complicated word thrown around as a way to make you mad about money. And yeah, right now it kind of is. But really, when you take a closer look, tariffs are surprisingly simple. Tariff is a fancy word that means tax on imported goods, aka a tax on items not made in your home country. Let's break that down. Since governments aren't usually in the business of selling goods, they have to fund themselves by other means, like adding small charges to the things we buy. This is a tax. There are a lot of different types of taxes: property, income, estate, but the two that really affect the price you're paying for goods are sales tax and, yes, tariffs. Now, sales tax is typically determined by your state, and some have none at all. But tariffs are another story. Back in the 18th century, when Washington, Madison, and Hamilton were still battling each other on what their new government would look like, tariffs were one of the first things to be signed into law. The Tariff Act of 1789 was established as a way to raise money to fund the baby government of the United States. This tax would be paid by whoever was bringing or importing items from other countries, usually to resell for their own business and profit. For example, Levi's, the jean company, manufactures its famous pants in multiple countries, like China, Mexico, and India, among others. Since those items are produced outside of the US, Levi has to pay a tariff when it brings those items into the US to sell. This tariff helps to cover the cost of the customs process, which is a government-run agency that inspects and manages the flow of imported goods. Now that seems pretty fair until the company in question decides it affects their bottom line. And suddenly they don't want to have to pay that money anymore and pass that cost onto you by raising their prices. Which leads us to the second W of WWHW. So why? Why does this matter to you? You're just a normal person out there going to buy a new outfit for the first day of school, or want to impress your new boss so you get that new promotion. You're not trying to be involved in any kind of sales business, right? Well, it's all about that pesky little thing on everything you buy, the price tag. The price of any item that you buy, from clothes to furniture to cars, isn't just some random number slapped on a tag. It's actually the result of an equation made by the businesses you're buying from, one called absorption costing, and it looks a little something like this. Creation plus delivery plus profit equals price. Creation covers all of your materials, labor costs, and packaging. These are all the things you have to actually make your physical product. Then you have delivery, which includes shipping, transportation, and the overhead cost to store all of your materials. And this includes both the delivery cost of sending out your product to customers, as well as the cost that you're paying to bring materials in to make your product. Finally, you have profit, which is how much money the business is looking to make off of the product when they sell it to you. All of this together adds up to the price that you end up paying in store or online. But you know what's always free? Hitting that subscribe button in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Congratulations! With that subscription, you'll get a brand new video in your sub feed every Saturday morning for the low cost of free. No taxes or tariffs involved. Speaking of, while tariffs started as a way to fund the government, eventually the powers that be found a better source of revenue, taxing the money that you make. Ah yes, the federal income tax, the bane of every April. In 1913, the Revenue Act established a permanent federal income tax that allowed the government to keep generating funds funds while also lowering the tariff rates of the time. This meant that tariffs took on a brand new role, the political powerhouse. As economic professor Douglas Irwin puts it, tariffs now held two more uses: restriction and reciprocity. To put it simply, tariffs allowed the government to have more control over or to restrict the flow of imported goods in order to protect domestic industry, which is the fancy way of saying to encourage consumers to buy from their home country. You know, made in the USA. It also meant that tariffs could now be used as a bargaining chip with other countries to secure better trade deals for the government involved. Over the years, the exact cost of tariffs have changed and varied by country and type of goods, including this year, 2025, the year that keeps on serving unprecedented times. It is only February. In 2025, the current administration issued 3 executive orders to create new tariffs. These were on imported goods from China, Mexico, and Canada. The new tariff for Chinese imports went into effect on February 4th, 2025, while the others, as of the making of this video, are being held pending negotiations, as are the reciprocity tariffs that would allow a business to charge another country the same tariff it charges them. That is the simplest way to put it. But that's not all. All of this also included a repeal of the de minimis loophole. You know, the one that allows Shein and Temu to charge such low prices? We actually covered that in detail in our previous episodes on the companies. While this repeal is also on pause as of the making of this video, it is still on the table, which means that Temu and Shein are likely looking to dump those costs somewhere a little more convenient. Which brings us to the H in our WWHW question. How is this going to affect you? Let's bring it all back to our Levi's example. As a business, their goal is to make that profit section of our equation as big as they can. And tariffs? They can take a big chunk out of those profits. So this year, when the current administration passed an executive order to change the tariff charge on goods imported from China, adding in an additional 10% tariff tax, it meant a change in profits from all of the apparel that Levi's brought in from China. This means that if Levi's paid, let's say, $15 for each pair of jeans it imported from China, it now also pays an additional $1.50 in tariff taxes per jean, on top of any other import fees. But let's bring it back to you. If Levi's charges, let's say, $45 for a pair of jeans that it made in China, and on that pair of jeans it made, let's say, a $5 profit, this new tariff would cause that profit to decrease from $5 to $3.50 per pair, which is not gonna make Levi's happy. But what if they had a way to keep making the same amount of profit despite the new tariff tax? Well, turns out they do, by passing that extra $1.50 on to you, their customer. Yeah, doesn't seem so fair anymore, does it? Well, Amy, you say to your screen, what if I just buy from companies that don't manufacture clothes in a different country? To that I say, it's not that simple. Don't you just love law? There's a big difference between something being made in the USA and assembled in the USA. And that difference can mean a huge cost to you. According to the FTC, or Federal Trade Commission, who's in charge of keeping companies honest, being assembled in the USA, or sometimes written as manufactured in the USA, means that the item took on a substantial transformation once it arrived in the US. Let's go back to our jean example. If you import the denim fabric to make your jeans and the metal filings to melt and cast into buttons, those items will undergo a substantial transformation to become the final product, jeans. You're making jeans. However, if you import a ready-made pair of denim pants that just lack buttons and then add buttons once you receive them in your country, that would not qualify as a substantial transformation, as most of the assembly took place outside of the US. And when it comes to how all of that can cost you more, it all comes down to how the businesses you're buying from are paying tariffs on each part that it imports, and passing some or all of that cost onto you, the buyer. Some of this can be circumvented by buying straight from the manufacturer, such like you do with Shein or Temu, but we'll get to that in a sec. Let's look at our other internal option. To be made in the USA, a product must be all or virtually all made in the US. So what does it take to qualify? I'm so glad you asked, you amazing theorist you. This comes down to the creation part of the equation that we mentioned earlier, specifically the materials and the labor. When it comes to the labor half of this equation, it's pretty simple. The product must be made and assembled inside the US. For materials, it's a little trickier. To qualify, an item must use ingredients or components sourced from US companies, and any non-US material can't form a significant amount of the product. Let's once again take a look at a pair of jeans. If the thread was sourced from Canada, but the rest of the items came from American resources, it would be considered made in the USA. On the other hand, if the buttons on a pair of button-fly jeans were made in Canada, then it is likely that that would not qualify as made in America. Why? Well, the buttons are considered a significant part of the jeans design. A button-fly can't function without buttons. But clearly, this is the better option for you, right? In this scenario, you aren't being saddled with excess tariff costs, which is actually one of the main goals of the tariff, to get you to buy more products made in your country. Tricky tariffs. And it brings us to the final W of our WWHW question. Who? When it comes down to who these tariff changes will really hit, and hit hard, there are two groups we need to talk about. The first is you, the consumer. As we've talked about all episode, these big businesses are here for one thing: profit. So when things like added tariffs come in and threaten their bottom lines, their first course of action is to pass that burden onto you. You know, the everyday person who is really just trying to buy a new pair of pants. But you have power. Power that these companies would love for you to forget. It's the power of information and your dollar. In this day and age, there are so many ways to shop, both online and in person. And many people are trying to buy small and support individuals over large corporations. Which, let me be clear, I am all for. I love finding new creators on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok who are building their businesses and making amazing, unique products. But at the same time, small businesses can come with big costs. And these small businesses are the other victims in this situation. Depending on the product, small businesses may need to source more affordable materials or manufacturing in order to keep themselves, well, in business. This is where that repealing of that de minimis tariff we mentioned earlier comes back to really ruin the party once again. This rule allows for shipments under $800 USD to come into the country without those same tariff costs. This rule had two uses. One, to free up bandwidth of customs workers who are dealing with the influx of more and more shipments every year, and two, to keep costs low for these small businesses to continue to function. Let's be real. Amazon, Shein, and Temu aren't likely to go under if the de minimis repeal goes into effect. But these small businesses who really rely on it to help sustain their livelihoods just might. So, how can these two groups really get together to take on the titan that is high tariff costs? By joining forces. Listen, times are hard right now for many people. And when times are hard, it's important to remember that you have the ultimate power. The power to choose where your dollar goes. Throughout this whole episode, we've armed you with the information you need to shop smarter and understand where your money is going. Now, it's up to you to decide where to spend it. And here's the thing. You have to do it in a way that fits with your current situation. It would be easy for me to sit here and say, don't buy from Amazon or Shein, the end. But every situation is different, and sometimes you need to buy what you can afford while still being able to pay rent and buy groceries. So instead, take a moment to see where you're spending your money and where you can afford to make those changes. Changes to help support companies and individuals doing their best to do right by you. But hey, that's just a theory. A style theory. Keep shopping smart. Up next on Style Theory.
This is what I found in the listing.
That was my body in a different face. That is so weird.
Yes, Cassie, I agree. That is freaky with a capital F.